Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to take a look at how I'm going to add sound effects to the game that I'm working at. This is somewhat of a follow-up to my previous game dev videos. However, you don't have to watch those as each video really focuses on a different functionality, and by the very nature these are meant to be intermediate. They're not meant to be introductory. So this is really for people who already have a basic grasp of the functionality, but maybe are having trouble putting it all together into a cohesive project. So as I said, this one we're going to add sound effects. So let's just briefly run this to see what we have so far. So if I left click, no sound effect. If I right click, no sound effect. And when there's an impact, no sound effect. The good news is this is the easiest type of sound effect to add to a game because in all cases, you want the sound effect to play when the object is being spawned. So in all three cases, in all three events, an object is being spawned. So the hero shot is being spawned when you left click. This is happening when the hero shot impacts with the wolf. And this happens when you right click. So when the prefab is being instantiated, and again, I use instantiate and spawn interchangeably because very often spawn is the word that people think of in gaming. The actual command is instantiate. So when these objects are being instantiated, when it instantiates is when you want the sound effect to play. And Unity is actually set up to do that automatically. So if I click on the buckshot, okay, and I simply take the sound effect I've chosen. And by the way, these are just sound files that I purchased off of the Unity store. You can use whatever you want. And there are multiple formats that Unity accepts. I believe it accepts OGG, so OGG, WAV, I believe MP3. Doesn't really matter because usually when you buy the assets, they'll give you multiple versions of each sound effect anyways. And some of them will even give you the Mac OS and Windows version. So it's just as easy as taking the sound effect and dragging and dropping it on that object in the inspector. So this is the buckshot object. Now when I drag and drop the sound file, we now get this audio source with that as the sound click. Audio clip, excuse me. Sound clip, audio clip, whatever. And like I said, by default, playing awake, well, that's what we want. When this gets instantiated, when it's awake, we want this to play. Now, loop, the only time you'd want this to happen is if, say, there's an ongoing sound effect, so you want the sound file to loop. Like, for instance, maybe it's like a missile or some kind of projectile that has like a thruster, and you want that thruster sound to keep playing, that is just a little snippet that you want to play over and over, then in that case, you want the loop. But in this case, it's just meant to be an initial sound effect. So I haven't made any changes there. I will reduce the volume. There are more complex ways to have the volume change based on proximity, but an easy way to make things sound like as if they're closer or further away is just to have different volumes. You can, again, devil's in the details. You can play around with that. Now that we've done that, I believe that's actually all we need to do. So we attach the sound file. It was already defaulted to playing awake, and we reduce the volume. So if we play this now and I right click, just like that. It's that easy to add a sound effect. And now it's just rinse and repeat. So the hero shot, again, we're just going to drag and drop the sound asset. It creates an audio source. Playing awake, we're going to again reduce the volume. And there you go. So it's really that easy to add a sound effect. I don't think I have a good one right now for the explosion, for the impact. Tell you what, we will reuse the same one for the shotgun effect, but I'll add another one later just so you can see again that it's really the same thing because again, all these events are the same kind of event. An object is being instantiated and therefore you just want a sound to play on awake. We'll reduce that. For this, I'd probably want more of like a fiery sound effect. See? Okay, so that is one of the ways to have a sound effect play. And again, the easiest one because, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, but it's really important to understand that you're having the sound play when the object instantiates, when the object spawns. Now, another way that you can get a sound effect to play is via a command. So you attach it, but you don't do play on awake. So I'll give you a few examples of how I did that. So let's just save this. And let's go to the upgrade scene. So I've already added them. We'll just backtrack into these now that we've seen how this works. So before, there was no sound effects, but if I click on one of the buttons now, same for this. Okay, so how did I make that happen? So if we go to our canvas and we click on one of our buttons, and this was something I mentioned in a previous video, was that to have functionality associated with a button click, you have to click on plus here to create an event. You attach an object that has a script attached, and then the functions in that script will then be selectable here. I've already ranted about how I think that's less than optimal, but that's what we're stuck with. So I basically am modifying insofar as that I'm adding additional lines of code to those pre-existing functions that I visited in the previous tutorial. So let's go ahead and let's see. So the object is the garage GM. You can see I already added the audio source, but play on awake is not selected. Okay, play on awake is not clicked. So if I open the script, so here are the functions that I made, and these will never ever get executed unless you expressly call them. In other words, start will run automatically, update runs automatically, on trigger enter is being checked automatically, so on and so forth. But if you make your own function, it will never occur unless you specifically call it. And that's what I'm doing here. For the button object, we'll just click on one of them. We are calling a function. Okay. So all I did, and it was identical for each one of these, I just said get component. So again, if there is nothing in front of get component, like the name of a variable, if it's just get component, then that is accessing a component of the object the script is attached to. The object the script is attached to is the garage GM object. The button references it, but the script is actually attached to the garage GM object. So basically, you're extending the function of one object to another. And again, I've ranted about that before. I won't here, although I kind of have. So get component is accessing a component of the object the script is attached to. In this case, it's the audio source. Well, we looked at that. We said audio source. Okay. So when the load village, excuse me, when the load village function is called, before we do this, we want to play a sound effect. So get component, audio source, and then just play. Okay, that's it. So you're just saying play the audio source. Now, if there are multiple audio sources with multiple clips, it gets more complicated, but again, that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. This is just the basics. Okay, so the first part of the video was having a sound effect play when an object instantiates. This part will looking have a sound effect play when a button is clicked. So no object is being instantiated. We're simply clicking on a button. So it's a different type of event. It's not a spawn event. It's not an instantiation event. It's a button click event. So that's it. Just get component audio source play. It's that easy. Now, the reason why I'm having this here, a delay, since this is the loading of the village, so if you actually go to this coroutine at the end here, okay, it loads the village. So if I was to have this, sorry for jumping around, right here, the sound effect wouldn't play because in the same frame it's saying play the sound effect, oh, and load the other scene. So the sound effect wouldn't get played. So I'm creating a slight delay so the sound effect plays. So that's one of the things to keep in mind is that you may think something works as intended, but it's actually not as you're intending it to work. You want there to be a slight delay. Like, for instance, think about Resident Evil. You click on Start. Does it automatically load? No, you always hear that voice saying Resident Evil. Same kind of thing. So you create a delay intentionally so the sound effect plays. If you don't want there to be a sound effect, then don't play a sound effect and just have it automatically load without a delay. So we can look at the other ones that don't have a delay. So upgrade shot speed, upgrade rate of fire, upgrade stun, on and on and on. It's all identical. I'm simply doing the checks to make sure that I have skill points, which I showed in the other video. I then check to make sure that I haven't hit the max amount of upgrades already. And then if that happens, then all I've done is added this. So if you do watch one of the previous tutorials, this is the only line that I've added. I've added get component, again, audio source, and then what I want to do with that audio source, I just want to play it. That easy. And like I said, the only thing that was a little bit more complicated was this, because you play the audio source and then you intentionally create a delay so it has time to load. So let's just quickly run this one last time, but I think that's about it for this. So you got the sound effects. And when you hit 4, okay, because 4 is the max, see, the sound effect is not playing, again, because this says if you haven't hit that max, then go ahead and upgrade and play the sound. But if you have hit the max, not only is it not doing the upgrade, it's not doing the sound. And then, again, when you click on this, creates that brief delay, and then it loads. And then we have our sound effects. I haven't done the particle system yet for the shotgun. I'm thinking of having a separate particle system for that, maybe even a knockback effect. It already does a knockback effect for the bosses. I just haven't finished coded that. So as you can see, very quickly it looks, or to be more precise, it sounds a little bit more like a game now because now you have that additional functionality. And then it's just building up on that. Every little thing decide, does this need a sound effect or not? Like, do I want to maybe have this kind of low growl every time every time when the wolf spawns? Problem is a whole bunch spawn at once, so that would probably be really noisy. So maybe just have music playing in the background. I could go into that, but that's really the same thing. You would simply attach a music sound file to, yeah, I'll just do that briefly. I won't actually go through the coding, but what you would do is you would simply choose a game object like the GM object, and again, you would just drag and drop the music file here, and that's it. By default, it says play and awake, and in that case, you would probably loop it. So that's another example of where you would loop a sound file is music. Music tends to have a loop to it. And if you think of the game Control, that sound file was actually broken up into sub sound files because the way they did Control is the song would only progress as you progress through the maze, the ashtray maze as it was called. And what would happen is there was certain loops that would play in certain parts, and so the song would just keep looping until you got to the next room, and then it would loop through another series not components, but portions of the song. So that was actually really kind of fascinating, the fact that they did that. So anyways, that's about it. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you found this interesting. If there's any other aspects of this game project you would like to see, I'd certainly be happy to show you. This is basically still on target for maybe the end of March. I've got some vacation time coming up, and this is going to be a very simple gameplay loop. It's just you have a wave of enemies, and then a boss shows up. You have a wave of enemies, boss shows up. So very old school kind of game loop, and it's just adding more and more monsters and more variety. I think that will probably be the next video, is showing you some of those specific varieties. Like there is a wizard that comes out and he makes the lights go off, so you can only see a very small portion of the area. That's something I'm not a big fan of. It needs to be done in sparingly. And then there's other things as well too, those kind of special one-off enemies. So anyways, so I hope you found this useful, and please enjoy the rest of your day.